Hey, sports fans, your favorite podcast, Athletics Chat, number 106. Stuart Weir's the good looking guy
Awesome.
in the top with all of his books behind him. And I'm in the Hawaiian shirt. This is Larry Eder. So we're talking from different sides of the pond. Stuart, great to see you.
Hi, good to be here.
So your season of travel is over for
It's over.
2023. Awesome.
16 meets, 53 days,
Wow.
and I'm home.
Wow, your wife must really love you. That's pretty amazing,
Yeah. Hmm.
And hey,
Look,
so
tell me,
go ahead.
before we start, I just need to clarify something. Is there another Larry Eder? Because I was speaking to the media officer today at the Great North Run, and she said, Larry Eder, he's a lovely man. So I just wondered, is there another
Oh,
one somewhere?
no, that's my alter ego because I used to go to the Great North Run almost every year, and
Hmm.
I was trying to find a way to get over this year because it was Mo's last race, and
Hmm.
I reposted a story this morning about in 2015 when we were there. Mo was watching my brother Brian take pictures, and he motioned to him. He said, "Hey, show me how to use your camera." And Brian said, "Look, you can do this." And he goes, "I want a picture of you two." So he took a picture, and it's Brian and my favorite photo. It's glorious, and he just, it was a very unguarded moment. It's just one of my favorite memories of Mo because, so many times, you and I were there. We just saw him just getting hammered on stuff. I mean that
Hmm.
2015 presser after the BBC thing came out. I mean, I
Hmm.
remember a reporter saying we're going to give it to him, and
Hmm.
Ricky Sims told me that day there were 37 questions and there were two that were not drug related. One was with Cathal
Hmm.
Denny and one with mine. And Mo
Yeah.
looked at me and said, "You mean you don't want to know about drugs?" And I said, "Well, I think everybody's kind of filling it all in, man." You know, and yeah, so it just and we got to see all of his big wins. I just missed 2010 in at the Europeans, but 2011 on was amazing. And his last
Hmm.
race in
Hmm.
Zurich, right in the
Hmm.
Weltklasse, that
Hmm. Hmm.
5,000 against the
Hmm.
Ethiopians, which he
Yeah.
just that was so
Hmm.
close. It's one of my favorite pictures of all times. Now, were you able to go
Yeah.
this? Did you enjoy it this year?
No, because I was just coming back from Brussels. But I mean, he won it 6 years running that I was there. But one of the problems I always think with something like the Great North Run is if you're there, you're actually watching it on a screen,
Yeah, yeah, that's
right?
true.
You're not actually have the sense of seeing it the way you do in a stadium. But that's just a personal opinion.
Yeah, no, I jumped on the truck the last 3 or 4 years. My
Mm.
issue was that it takes me a few minutes to get off the truck, and right at the end of a race, you got to do it
Mm.
quickly. And I really wasn't hoping to fall. And
Mm.
so it was a very interesting to watch those races close. The Mo era is over. He said that no more big races, and he went
Yeah.
out in style.
To be
That was
fair, he is 40,
yeah,
and he was still running a time that probably, I mean, interesting that, he's in a good field and
yeah.
he's finishing fourth ahead of people who are 15 years younger than him.
Yeah, yeah. No, it tells
Mm.
you the I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I remember him in Daegu and even before that in
Yes,
Osaka.
yes,
And in
yeah.
Osaka, I found out afterwards, Ian Stewart told me that Mo was thinking of quitting. He was
Mm.
so despondent that, how
Yeah,
do I get how do
yeah.
I get better than sixth, man? How do I
Mm.
deal with, beat these guys? And,
Yeah.
it took a lot of work and he put the work in.
And,
I always thought
and
that was
I've heard him say that that going and living for a month with a group of East Africans opened his eyes. That
yeah.
he just said, these people wake up in the morning, they eat, they train, they rest, they train, they eat, they sleep, and they do
Yeah,
the same the next day. And
yeah,
that Mo said he thought that he was quite professional in his approach. And then he saw the commitment of these people,
yeah,
and that was life changing.
yeah. Well, you look at how well the Ethiopians did in the World Championships and how they trained together, and They were much more successful than the Kenyans this time around too. And it was a very interesting. Budapest was interesting on a lot of levels. Your British medals in the distances, you had the 800 and the 1500, and our best medal in our only medal in the distances was the 800. And while I thought Alicia Monson ran well, and Lynn Flanagan was in the top 10 in the marathon, and Zach Penning ran close to his, within a couple minutes of his PB in the marathon. It was surprising not to see a British runner up in the 5 and the 10, and without Mo, and I thought, Mark, a lot of these guys have had injuries. And so,
yeah.
So, you're doing tremendous in the 1500. I mean, you put three guys in the final, and so it's in your medal count at 10 was just tremendous. Tell us about Zurich in Brussels and how you ended the season.
Yeah, I mean, Zurich was immediately after Budapest, and there was a major problem with the computer which controls air traffic control in Britain, which meant that some British athletes got stuck for 3 days in Budapest. And this meant that some people who had planned to do Zurich dropped out because they couldn't get there. And also, of course, immediately there's a question for an athlete immediately after World Championship. If you've run well, you might think, well, I'll just call today. Or if you've run badly, you might think, well, I'll call today next year at the Olympics. And of course, then others take the opposite view. But one of the most fascinating races in Zurich was the men's 400 hurdles, where Kieran McMaster beat Warholm.
Yeah, that was incredible.
And I had an interesting chat with Warholm in Stockholm, and I just asked him about motivation, and he said, "Look, I've won everything, so my motivation is having fun." And so I reminded him of this in Zurich, and he gave me a smile and said, "It's a lot more fun if you win."
Yeah, and he paid in the quote that they had on flash quotes. He
Yeah.
paid Kieran a compliment. He goes, the Kieran challenged him. It was wonderful to watch on TV. What a competitive race, but it also shows that Karsten is human, and but he's already in Eugene training. I saw a few photos of him today getting ready for the pre. So that's going to be very interesting to see, what is going on, and that will be a lot of fun. What did you think about that 1500?
Again, I mean, Joyce Kerr lost it by half a step, really. But I mean, he did say that it had been an effort to go there and race. He'd been quite happy not to, but having committed, he wasn't going to let people down. But but it just shows that everybody is beatable.
No, I think so too. Let's go to Brussels. It was nice to see Laura Muir with that 355, and then Chiara Magin right behind her with the new Irish national record. That was a wonderful race.
I mean, because Laura, having finished sixth in Budapest, well, she actually felt she had run okay. The race perhaps just didn't quite suit her the way it had worked out. And then she went to Zurich and won an 800, beating several pretty good, Raven Rogers and others. And then she goes to Brussels and again runs a really good race where she actually took it on with Gerard McGeegan chasing her. And I mean, I spoke to McGeegan afterwards about breaking the Irish record, running a second PR in the last couple of months, and you still lose. And in fact, she's actually beaten Laura more than the other way around this year. But again, I was really pleased for Laura because obviously it's not been the smoothest year for her. But she decided then that to go from Brussels on Friday to run in New York on Sunday was too much, so she didn't defend. But she will be in Eugene trying to become the Diamond League champion.
Cool. Gemma Riki's had a great season.
Yes.
She ran quite well in Budapest. She ran well in Brussels, and now she just became the Fifth Avenue Mile champion.
Yes,
and
yes,
4:18:89, and then our friend Josh Kerr ended his season with his
yeah,
3:48:12 going
mm,
away. So
yeah.
Scotland shows that they are the mile champions. And you said in your story you had some exclusive news.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that the perhaps the Fifth Avenue Mile should become the Edinburgh Royal Mile because it'd be easier for the Scottish athletes to keep winning it.
Yeah, that's true.
You know,
Yeah,
and
it'd make it a
and
lot easier
and
for Josh and for Gemma, right?
yeah, and Laura, and I mean, we're worried about our our carbon footprint. So therefore, by having the this Avenue Mile in Edinburgh, then we could reduce that footprint. So I think there's a lot for it, and we may have the exclusive story on this. We haven't yet had a comment from the New York people on this, but I'm sure they'll see
Sure.
it our
Sure.
way.
Well, we'll make sure we get that. Yeah, that's an upcoming Stuart. I think that makes a ton of sense. What do you like about the Memorial Van Damme? What do you like about Brussels and the track meet there?
Tell you one thing I like is that they've replaced the seats, which were so small you couldn't get into them, with
Hmm.
new ones.
Oh, nice.
Again, it's a meet with so much history. There was a new track this year, which all the athletes were saying was fast. I always remember Christian Harder, who was asked about whether the track was fast. He says, "Well, the funny thing is, I had to keep moving my legs anyway." But no, that was a good meet. And if I tell you that Mondo jumped 6 meters, you wouldn't be terribly surprised. Yaroslava did 2 meters in the high jump. Jakob broke a world record in the 2,000 meters. And you'll not
Yeah,
believe this, Larry, but every athlete who finished did a season's best. Isn't that just tremendous?
that's amazing. And that was probably their first 2000 of the season, correct?
Oh, you think so? You think,
Yeah,
oh, right. You
yeah,
think
yeah.
so? Yeah, I mean, Jakob is a brilliant athlete, absolutely brilliant. But to be the 2 mile world record holder, the 2,000 meter world record holder, you're really coming. What are you going to do next? The 2,500 meters.
Well, they used to, Pablo Nurmi had records at 1.5 miles, 1 3/4, two
Yeah,
and a quarter.
yeah,
They used to do
yeah,
all that stuff, and people
mm,
love that. I mean, my grandpa saw Nurmi run in the 30s
mm,
in the Midwest, and he said it was something he remembered his entire life,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
running on the board. So it's the thing with Jakob is that I think we're going to see him move up the distance. Well, he's running the 5,000. The 1,500, he's been beat in 2 years in a row. Can he come back into winning form there? And to
yeah,
do that, he's
yeah,
just going to have to crush people before that
mm,
last lap. And if somebody
yeah,
has anything, the two Scotsmen have figured out his
mm,
Achilles heel, besides
yeah,
that last
yeah.
200 meters and a 1,500, it's his ego.
But there was a fascinating quote from Josh Kerr, who
Yeah.
after Budapest, where he said, "With 50 meters to go, I sensed that I wanted it more than he did." That's a fascinating thing to say.
Well, it was
Mm.
Bill Toomey, the 1968 Olympic decathlon gold medalist. When I asked him what was the difference between him winning the gold medal and him not winning a medal, and he said, the medals are won by people who covet the medal the most. He said, and I
Mhm.
coveted the medal. He was very careful
Yeah.
in his wording. And
Mm.
I found that an interesting word.
Yeah.
You could tell that Josh wanted it more because he ran so well through the rounds
Mm.
and he
Yeah.
did not make a mistake in the
Mhm.
final, even though people told me, well, he got boxed in with, about 300 to go. Well, that happened to Peter Snell too, and a couple times, and you figure out how to run out of that, and Keely
Mm.
Hodgkinson, that run on the inside in the 800
Mhm.
in
Mm.
Budapest was I still think about that one and go,
Mhm.
wow,
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing in Brussels was Elaine Thompson Hera
yes.
running 10:84. and you sort of wish she had run 10:84 6 weeks ago, and you wonder what she'd have been running in Budapest. Just frustrating that she got injured at the wrong time.
Yeah, yeah.
But it just would be interesting to know what, I mean, just the 100 was crowded enough, but I mean, to have her in there alongside Shelly Ann and Shikari
Yeah.
and so on would have been really interesting.
Yeah, no, it's nice to see her running again well.
Yeah.
Elaine has had injury issues since
Mm.
2016. In
Yeah.
17, she was racing in a flat type of racing spike or shoe. And will she be ready for 2024? I think it's very difficult for some of the older athletes to deal with a championship every year. I think Keeley seems to thrive on it. I think a thing right now is at a place where she is just worn out from them. And I think that it's an athlete by athlete issue. And we've got champs for the next 2 years. We've got Paris, and then we've got Tokyo. And then we're going to have a whole new format in 2026. And then you go back to a World Champs in 7 and LA in 2028. So I'm curious to see how people are doing after next year, how people are doing after the year after that. And I venture to say we'll see a whole group of people in 2025 who may just say, hey, we need a break.
I mean, it's interesting that the mentioning Keeley and comparing her with Utting. I think I mentioned this before, that during a presser in Paris, Sydney was asked, are you going to run 400 flat or 400 hurdles in the World Championship? And her reply, which I took to be an honest reply, is that is coach's decision. Whereas Keeley is not interested in running 15s.
Yeah.
And I talked to her coach, Trevor, about that, and he said, yeah, she just doesn't want to do it. And I think probably in a few years she will, but for the moment we're concentrating on 800. And to me, that was such a different dynamic that it was Trevor was respecting what Keeley wanted. And in fact, Keeley went off and ran a 400 in the European under-23s because she said, I wanted to practice, I wanted to do some speed training. So I thought that rather than just running around the track on my own, I would go to an event with rounds and see what I could do.
It makes a lot of sense.
But again, see, I think Keeley is an athlete who likes to run, likes to compete, and is therefore open to running 400s and 800s. I mean, she said that she'd quite like to get in the relay team, but at the moment she's not quite fast enough.
Well, one of the other things I think about Keeley, I mean, I was with Jenny Meadows for a few minutes, Trevor's wife, and we got to catch up in Budapest on the second day, and we were talking about Keeley, and I think Keeley has been fortunate enough to surround herself with a group that's encouraging her, and I think Keeley still likes to race and to run.
He does.
I think that my observation this year, and not trying to disparage Sydney, McLaughlin, Levrone are a thing, but I think that both of them seem to have reached an impasse where I'm not sure if they're liking the sport or the pressure from everything is too much. And, early in the season, I thought, well, this is Bobby trying to orchestrate when they race and all that stuff. I think it's Bobby trying to keep them in the sport. And I have a lot more respect and admiration for the complexity of things. After the semifinal, a thing talked to some of the media, and Deji Oganyimbo, our guy, was there. And Deji got a few minutes with her. And she was going through the motions. She was waiting for tacky questions or questions that just she wasn't going to answer because there were people that were doing that. And people were actually very, I think it was Jason from AW and Deji and someone from Athletics Africa. And so she took the time with them, was very patient with them. And it was really interesting when we got to interview Sydney back in New York,
Yeah.
how relaxed she was and how much she enjoyed dealing with us one-on-one. And she seemed to genuinely enjoy it. And I remember telling her husband, she's really good at this. You guys have got to do more. People absolutely adore her. And he's very protective of his wife. And I understand that. But Keely must be under incredible pressure in media attention in her country, and she's figured it out. And a thing is one of 29 medals. Keely is one of 10 in her country. So it's a very interesting dynamic, you know. And so it's going to be, Paris is going to be fascinating because of the pressure, I think, that are on some of these athletes. You look at a guy like Noah Lyles, who seems to absolutely thrive on it and, doesn't seem to be able to get enough of it. And Sha'Carri is like that. I mean, I really think the thing with Sha'Carri this year, where she finally picked up 3 medals, she's a total rock star in the U.S. She's on every social media platform that you're looking at. And Nike just put her in a commercial, which was quite smart, So you're seeing these athletes, and I think, was it Ben Bloom put together the sheet that there were medalists from, is it 46 countries? And there were, let's see, 94 countries that had one athlete on their teams, but there was also 106 that had, up to 164 athletes, like the U.S., And then you had countries like France getting 1 medal, Germany getting none. It's been a long, long time,
Did I mention that Britain had 10 medals?
Yes, I think I heard something about that, and that was wonderful, and it was, and you had some very close ones and some other things too, and
absolutely.
I think that I was very surprised when Jasmine Sawyers didn't move on. I had picked her for a medal, but she's ended the season well in Zagreb.
Except the story was with Jasmine, sadly, is that in Stockholm it was very wet, and I can attest to that since I got my shoes absolutely soaked, and she slipped on the runway and did something, and so she was carrying that injury into Budapest. So that's part of the reason. But look, just before we leave Keely Hodgkinson, I think that everyone needs to know that the Diamond League has just put on YouTube behind the scenes with Keely Hodgkinson. So it's a 15-minute video. I mean, it's scandalous, Larry.
Yeah.
I get such a small part in it.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I feel your pain. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there I am in all my glory, and it's just, I'm cut off like that.
Oh, I'm so. Did you have a speaking part?
Yes, but they played music over it.
I'm sorry.
Seriously, it's a nice insight into what it's like for an athlete at a Diamond League, dealing with all the media and the preparation and so on. So find it on the Diamond League YouTube channel, and you can like it if you want, but make sure to tell them that you think that I should have had a bigger part.
I will make sure I leave that comment, okay? Because I think that's important. Yeah, I watched Noah Lyle's first episode of Untitled. I think it's very well done on Netflix. I think that people will, and on Peacock, I think people will be fascinated with his story. And it shows the season in episode 1 up until the U.S. champs, until he made the world. So it's going to be very interesting to see kind of how that plays out. And I'm really curious to see how he's able to manage the pressure that he will feel before Paris, because the amount of social media is just continuing to grow and continuing to get weirder. And I wanted to ask you about something that Jonathan Galt, a young man who writes, a senior writer for Let's Run, and he's a wonderful writer. We really enjoy Jonathan's commenting, and and the
Yeah.
folks at Let's Run. He did a column, Final Thoughts on Budapest. And one of the things he talked about was the difference between content creators and journalists. And I don't know how it's going in with British athletics, but in the US, USA Track and Field has gone out of its way to have a relationship with content creators, and they're kind of limiting journalists. And there is a difference. I wish content creators would be more journalists. I wish journalists could do a little more content creation because I think there's some crossover. However, what seems to work on the social media channels is people being asked questions that are pretty light. You know, the questions that are toughest, like Cathal Dennehy got really some negative vibes from Toby Amason when he asked her to talk about the whereabouts issues. And she wasn't rude, but she cut him off. Now, I thought that, and I've watched it several times, I thought Catha did it very thoughtfully, but he felt he has a responsibility to ask those questions. And some athletes seem to only want to deal with content creators. Other athletes will talk to journalists as well. Now, I remember in 2019, we were dealing with, on the third day, Alberto Salazar got banned. And every other question in the medal post pressers was, what's your thoughts about Salazar being banned? And I remember Sam Kendricks going, I'm a pole vaulter. I don't know anything about a distance running coach, you know? And so those kind of things put a bad taste in some of the athletes' mouths. And there are also, as you know, there are media who come to these events and somehow get credentialed that have really never been to a world championships or a major thing before. And I remember Johan Blake and Usain Bolt in 2012 in London, and Seb Coe was sitting up there, and they were asked some of the dumbest questions I've ever thought about, and they were just looking at each other and kind of smiling and laughing a little bit and trying to give an honest answer. And that's really difficult for some of the athletes, you know. How is it going in the UK right now? Do you have differentiate between content creators and journalists, or is it mostly kind of a journalist when you go to the events?
I mean, athletics writing, I think, in the UK is in a precarious situation. When I started going to Diamond Leagues in about 2013, there might be 5 written press newspaper people from the UK. This year, I have been to 9 Diamond Leagues outside the UK. And in Paris, there were 2 British written press journalists, and in Florence, there was 1. I don't think there were any at any other events.
Wow.
But then, I mean, you and I were together in Doha, and we remember commenting that we were in the front row and a little surprised that we got the prime seats. But then when you actually looked around, there were about 4 athletics journalists there. There was a full row of local organizing committee people and several from World Athletics. And it's this situation that almost the meet is controlling its own narrative. Writing its own stuff.
It's frustrating in that, like, for example, we had several meets this season where they totally limited us on photos. And then there was others like the Weltklasse and the British meets where you've got a plethora of photos. And then Kevin Morris, my guy, Kevin went to Budapest and several of the other meets. He did the Fifth Avenue Mile for us too. And so it's our readers want to see photos. They love the video. And World Athletics is, I think, supporting the development of young content creators, but I don't think they understand nor appreciate how they have slowed down and actually thwarted the development of journalists. They've dropped the media. There was used to be a media council, and that was killed a couple years ago because I don't think Jackie Brock Doyle thought there was a need for it. And it's I understand that there is money being spent everywhere, but if all of the content becomes just boxed out of World Athletics and from the meets, it's scary for me, and it's like, how do we do that? I know there's a group that's working on the Hayward Field legacy, and one of the things they're trying to do is develop young journalists. And I mean, and they have some young photographers that are 9 or 10 years old, and they have some young content creators. But the idea of journalists actually going and writing about these events, it's going to be very interesting. I mean, I'm going to be at the pre. Jeff Benjamin, our guy from Staten Island's coming out. Dave Hunter will be there, but we're all based in North America. And it's still expensive for us. For you guys, it's, terribly expensive. I mean, it was more expensive to go to Eugene than it was for me to go to Budapest, And
that's why I'm not going.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's just, and also having the Diamond League finals, and I love the prestige of it. It's a big deal for Prefontaine to have that, but I really like seeing the pre and Labor Day weekend. It's just it's worked well, and we need a couple more Diamond League meets in the U.S. That would be very nice. So we'll have to see how it progresses over the next several years. But we've had an incredible season. You're going to get a well-earned vacation, my friend. I've got about 9 of your stories to post, which I'll be doing over the next several days, and thank you for those. And then we'll be catching up with you after about the 7th of October?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Stuart, thank you so much for joining me on my birthday. I'm 65 today. And
happy birthday to you.
Thank you. And this is the 51st anniversary of my first cross-country race that I ran in Creve Coeur, Missouri. A whole distance of 2 miles. So I remember that. Before we leave, we wanted to talk about our friend Peter Matthews. Peter was a long-time statistician and actual announcer for some of the finest meets in the UK. I met him in 2006 at the Crystal Palace meeting, but by that time he had been editing the Athletics Annual since I think the late 1980s, and he did his last full volume of that in 2022. And on his desk, they found him editing his weekly newsletter. He passed away over the weekend he had had a recent heart issue. He'll be sorely missed. He was a wonderful champion of the sport. Any recollections of Peter?
I sat with him at something that I think no longer exists, the British Athletics Writers Association. Hasn't met for a couple of years, I thought he was a lovely man, very much old school in terms of producing his books. In an era when you can find everything online, but a real man of the sport. And as you say, a character, and he will be missed.
No, he will be chatting with our friend Mel Watman up there. Maybe they're talking to Pavo Nurmi, So Peter Matthews, rest in peace. And thank you, Stuart, for visiting all these meets and writing for them for us. Enjoy your vacation. And when you get back, we'll have lots of things to talk about. Perhaps a new marathon world record from our friend Eliud Kipchoge. And we just had a women's 5K and 10K world record on the roads this weekend in the same race. So lots of things coming. But thank you again for joining me with Athletics Chat 106. This is Larry Eder with RunBlogRun. We have Stuart Weir and I are doing, this is the 3rd season of Athletics Chat We'd like to thank Michael Deering, who manages these podcasts for us and is so patient with us, and Stuart for waiting today. I had a doctor's appointment and a drive-in from Madison. So it's Monday, September 11th. This is Athletics Chat 106. Run, jump, and throw today, and have a great day. Talk to you soon. Hey, sports fans, Larry Eder here. This is Athletics Chat 106, the epilogue. This is the beginning of our third season of the Athletics Chat. We started it during the beginnings of the pandemic. It was the brainchild of Mike Deering and Adam Johnson Eder, the idea of putting me into podcast and having Stuart and I talk. And we did it, and people loved it. And we've built up a nice audience. And we took a break this spring, and now we're back. And Stuart's going to take a couple weeks to recover from the long summer. He was everywhere. And we've got 9 stories of his and 4 athletics chats to get up, and we'll get those out so you can enjoy them. Today, we talked about Zurich and Brussels and some more deep thoughts on Budapest. And we chatted a little about our friend Peter Matthews, who passed away unexpectedly this last weekend. And we talked about, all things track and field. And it's a wonderful sport, but the track season's coming to an end. Josh Kerr and Gemma Reekie, both Scottish athletes, won the Fifth Avenue Mile, the New Balance Fifth Avenue Mile, on Sunday in 3:48.12 and 4:18.89 respectively. And we had some fun with that. And Josh is not going to be running the Prefontaine, but Noah Lyles will be. And so there's going to be some great races this weekend, the 16th and 17th of September, and RunBlogRun will be there. So make sure you check that out. This is Larry Eder with RunBlogRun for Athletics Chat 106. Talk to you soon.